Here is a Windmere rotating louver fan. I had to look up the word louver. I know that's a commonly referenced term for these kind of rotating grill fans, and I just wasn't really sure what it meant. Apparently it has to do with the direction, the slanted direction of the little slats in here that provide direction of the airflow. As the grill rotates, the airflow kind of rotates with it. So that's where the louver term comes from, FYI. So this is going to be model RF-1010, style P, size 10-inch, current 0.6 amps, made in Taiwan, Republic of China. I got this fan yesterday for $7, which I think is a pretty good price because I think these are pretty uncommon. There was a crack. It is a crack. Two cracks, actually. I glued it here, but it looks like it separated a little bit since I glued it. These fans have been on my radar for a while, and I've wanted one, but usually when they pop up, wherever they pop up, they're usually pretty pricey. People ask a lot for them, so I think I got a pretty good deal on this. It's a little bigger than I expected it to be. I kind of thought that these were, just based on pictures and videos, maybe I wasn't paying attention very well, but I thought that these were smaller. This is like a 10-inch fan. It looks like, I guess, the RF-1010, and I think it actually said size 10 inches on the sticker too. I just, for whatever reason, thought that these were smaller, more like a 7-inch fan size. I kind of thought that it would have been maybe about this tall in comparison, and it would have just been smaller overall. So I was a little surprised the fan was bigger than I thought it was going to be. I would think that this is from the 90s at a glance, just by the white plastic and just kind of the general look of it. It looks like a 90s fan, but let's see if I can get the plug out. It's a non-polarized plug, and most of the time when I see these fans pop up, people say that they're from the 80s. I couldn't find a date on it anywhere, but I would have to agree it's probably from the 80s, even though it does seem like the styling is much more 90s. There were different trends that came out of the 80s. There was like the more homely wood grain brown stuff, and then there was other stuff that had like the big bold block letters and was more of a muscly kind of design. And then there was stuff like this. There was more contemporary that eventually ended up paving the way for a lot of the stuff that came in the 90s that would have looked like this. So look at the Windmere logo here, the cursive logo, and just the general design here is more contemporary. I would even say Euro looking, and it really reminds me of, if you've ever seen the movie from the late 80s, I think it was like 1987, it was called License to Drive, with Corey Haim and Corey Feldman, and Heather Graham was in it, and Heather Graham's name was Mercedes in the movie. There was a scene in the movie at the end where Mercedes comes to pick up Corey Haim in a Volkswagen convertible, And this fan really reminded me of that car so much I had to go look for a picture of it. I couldn't find a good picture of the car in the movie, from the actual movie, like a still clip or whatever, but I found a pretty good picture of the car, and I'll go ahead and put it in here. So that's kind of funny. Sometimes fans do look like cars a little bit, little things about it. So this is a 7-blade or 7-leaf, 7-wing blade, and it's a PSC motor. The capacitor is wired to the speed selector switch down here. I've already cleaned the fan. It was pretty rough. I wasn't able to split the motor and clean it out as much as I wanted to, mostly for 2 reasons. One, probably can't really see it very well, but the blade is attached like one of the, think of the Duracraft turbo fans. They have those clips on the end of the blade. This has one of those clips on it, and it was also pretty rusty, so I didn't really want to mess with it. And usually, even with the Duracraft fans, I just leave those clips alone, and I'll just split the motor, and then I'll leave the front bearing just kind of hanging on the motor shaft there between the rotor and the blade, and I'll just manage to clean it as well as I can like that. And that was the plan for this. But I got the motor screws out and started to pull it apart and realized that the rotor wasn't wanting to come through the windings. It was kind of seemed like it was sticking there a little bit. It wasn't coming through freely, so I decided I'm not gonna fight with it, because I've went down that path before and ended up killing fans permanently, as in breaking windings trying to do that. And I'm not going to do that again, especially with something like this, something this cool. I'm not going to take those kind of risks just to clean the motor. So I did what I could with a vacuum and brushes, and I was able to get the zoom spout in there. I could pull the motor apart about a 1/2 inch or so, and got the zoom spout in there to oil the bearings, put it back together, and it seems pretty good now. So let's go ahead and run the fan. The rotate was working when I got it, and then for whatever reason, after I cleaned the fan and I put it back together, it wasn't working. So I took it apart again, and I took the base cover off just to try to trace the wires back and stuff, and everything looked good. I couldn't find where there was like any connection issues or whatever, and I put it back together and it was working again. So I'm not sure what's up with that. Hopefully it'll work okay for the video, but it seems like there's a connection issue in there somewhere, so I probably won't use the rotator too much when I'm using the fan. I do plan on using this just because why wouldn't you? It's a pretty cool fan. So the speeds are kind of reversed here. So 3 is going to be like the low, and then 2 would be the medium as always, and 1 will be the high. So we'll start it on the low speed, 3, after I plug it in. I think that's 2 videos in a row now. I forgot to plug in the freaking fan. All right, low. It moves really good air too. Even on the low speed, it's throwing the air out. Unfortunately, the blade isn't in perfect balance. It does have some vibration to it, less so on the low speed, but by the time you get to the high speed, there's quite a bit of vibration there. So we'll go to speed 2. High speed, speed 1. Turn on a rotating louver. It works how it's supposed to. It basically moves the air around in a big circle. Unfortunately, it's not like you can't depress the rotate to turn off the rotation. You actually have to hit the off button to turn off the fan and the rotation. That's kind of nice though, the rotation is on a separate motor, so the speed is consistent. Most fans like this, you would adjust the rotation speed with like a brake nut here. That's how most of these work. That's also kind of unfortunate too. If the rotation motor goes out on this, then you just lose that function altogether. So see, it doesn't do anything. You have to turn it off. And if I leave the fan off and just turn the rotation on, the fan will stay off, but it'll still rotate. So turn on high speed and do a spin down. That was kind of cool. I want to do that again just to hear that whoosh of air. I mean, this thing really jumps up and gets moving and you can hear it. So we'll do that one more time. Here is the high speed.